So, um, have you ever felt completely, utterly lost in a new environment? Like, think back to the last time you moved to a new city, or, even just visited one for the very first time.
Oh, yeah. That initial shock to the system.
Right. You're just trying to survive that brutal first month. Picture yourself standing on some busy street corner, staring blankly at your phone map. You're trying to figure out a transit schedule that, let's be honest, might as well be written in ancient hieroglyphics.
It's totally overwhelming. You look visibly out of place.
Exactly. You are exhausted from carrying your bags, and, oh, to top it all off, you just walked into a local coffee shop, panicked under the pressure, and ordered the completely wrong thing just to escape the line.
Yeah, we've all been there. It really is a universal shock. You're dealing with intense sensory overload. I mean, everything around you is technically functional. The trains are running, the people are buying their coffee, but the underlying logic of the place is completely foreign to you.
You just haven't decoded the environment yet.
Exactly. You haven't decoded it.
Well, that exact scenario, surviving that overwhelming transition into a new environment, that's the core mission for our deep dive today. But we aren't just doing some travel guide here,
No, not at all.
right? We are using this highly relatable scenario to unlock something really incredible. We're getting into the secret native speaker knowledge of the English language.
It's a fantastic framework.
Yeah. We've gathered some fascinating research today designed to bridge a very specific and honestly a very frustrating gap. Is the gap between intermediate textbook English, what language teachers usually categorize as B1, and advanced natural native level fluency, which is known as B2 or C1.
And bridging that gap is notoriously difficult for learners because most people assume that moving from B1 to C1 just involves like memorizing a longer list of obscure vocabulary words.
Right, like finding the biggest word in the dictionary.
Exactly. The assumption is you take a basic sentence, swap in some multisyllable word from a thesaurus, and bam, suddenly you're fluent. But true fluency is so much more dimensional than that.
So what does it actually require then?
Well, it requires mastering three core things. First, collocations, which are words that naturally pair together. Second, idioms, which carry centuries of cultural weight.
Right.
And third, connected speech.
Connected speech, right?
Yeah, which is the physical, often kind of messy way native speakers blend sounds together in real time.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people listening right now, whether they're learning a language or even native speakers trying to refine their communication, they hit this exact plateau where they feel like they sound a bit robotic.
Yeah, it's very common.
So why does intermediate English often sound so stiff compared to advanced English? I was turning this over in my head, and I look at it like this. Relying on B1 textbook English is like having a technically accurate, perfectly scaled map of a new city.
Okay, I like that.
Right. It tells you exactly where the main avenues are. But B2 and C1 fluency, that is knowing the actual lived-in shortcuts. It's knowing which alleys to cut through to save 10 minutes, or, knowing which streets flood when it rains.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
So I have to ask, are those B1 textbook phrases technically wrong? Or do they just lack that human flavor?
Well, the short answer is they are perfectly correct. I mean, if you use B1 textbook English, anyone on the street will understand your literal baseline meaning.
Right, you get the point across.
Exactly. But the profound psychological difference lies in how the message is delivered. Because B1 is purely factual. It's basically a data transfer from one brain to another.
Just the raw data.
Right. Advanced speakers, on the other hand, they use idioms and collocations to express emotions, not just facts. They aren't just giving you data, they are telling you how they feel about the data.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And moving to a new city is, an inherently emotional, stressful experience. Advanced language reflects that emotional reality.
So B1 is facts, and B2 and C1 are feelings. That makes so much sense. Let's trace how this actually plays out with some of the phrases from our sources. Let's track that evolution from textbook to advanced.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
I want to start with the simple act of unpacking boxes in a new apartment. A B1 learner, dealing in cold, hard facts, might say, I want to establish my new home.
Establish. Yeah. I mean, it's grammatically flawless, but it sounds incredibly clinical, doesn't it?
Totally. You
Yes.
sound like you are setting up a corporate branch office, not a living room where you plan to, watch movies.
Exactly. So a B2 speaker makes it much more conversational by using a collocation. They would say, I need to set up my apartment.
Set up, okay, which
Uh-huh.
feels infinitely more natural.
It does. But then we hit that C1 level where the emotional desire for comfort finally kicks in. The C1 speaker says, I'm still trying to settle
Oh,
in.
settle in. Yeah,
You can almost hear the physical sigh of relief baked into that phrase,
it
right?
really can. It stops being about building the IKEA furniture and becomes about the psychological feeling of, like, permanence and comfort.
You capture the transition perfectly. You move from the physical mechanics setting up to the emotional state of being settling in.
Right.
Now, once the boxes are unpacked, you have to actually leave the apartment. So a B1 learner facing their new neighborhood relies on the textbook fact again and says, I am investigating the bus system.
Investigating. It sounds like you were the detective putting caution tape around a bus stop.
Yeah, it's way too formal for the context of public transit. So at the B2 level, we soften that rigidity with a phrasal verb. We say, I am looking into the buses.
Okay, looking into. Much better.
But when we elevate this to the C1 tier, we get an idiom, I'm trying to get the lay of the land.
Get the lay of the land. That paints such a vivid, almost historical picture.
It really does.
You aren't just like scrolling through a transit app. You are an explorer standing on a hill, surveying the territory, trying to figure out how the whole ecosystem works. You're researching, but with a sense of geographical awareness.
And that sense of awareness extends to how you interact with the locals, too. The factual B1 approach is I'm adapting to the new culture.
Which, again, technically accurate, but it sounds like a biology textbook describing a chameleon or something.
Exactly. So the B2 evolution focuses on the visual reality. I am trying to blend in. You know, you want to avoid sticking out as a tourist.
Right, blending, yeah.
But the C1 idiom dives deep into the psychological reality of being in a foreign space. The C1 speaker says, I'm slowly finding my feet here.
Finding my feet. I think that is the most relatable one in the whole stack, honestly.
Sure.
Because when you first arrive somewhere completely new, you literally feel off balance. You feel wobbly. You don't know the unwritten social rules. You don't know the physical layout. Becoming confident isn't just a mental exercise. It genuinely feels like regaining your physical balance after spinning in circles.
That physical metaphor carries so much weight, and we see it again when talking about mastering the environment. A B1 speaker says they simply want to get around the city.
Okay.
A B2 speaker might say they're learning how things work, but the C1 idiom is, I need to learn the ropes.
Learn the ropes, which implies that you are dealing with a massive, complex system like the rigging on an old sailing ship. And you have to understand which rope pulls which sail so the whole thing doesn't crash. It's not just moving from point A to point B. It's understanding the invisible underlying mechanics of your new environment.
The overarching theme for you listening to this is to visualize the action and the emotion behind the words, rather than just translating them directly. That represents the true shift into advanced fluency.
Okay, I follow the emotional vocabulary. But here is where we hit a massive practical wall.
Okay, what's the wall?
Well, it is one thing for us to sit here in a quiet space,
Yeah.
right, reading these advanced idioms off a piece of paper, perfectly enunciating every single syllable. But what happens when you actually walk into that busy coffee shop?
Real life happens.
Right. Why do you still feel completely lost when you hear a native speaker say these phrases in real life? You know the vocabulary now, but you still freeze. And honestly, part of me feels like native speakers are just being lazy.
Lazy?
Yeah. Like, are they really following complex rules, or are they just slurring words together because they're speaking too fast?
Well, what's fascinating here is that this is easily the most common frustration for anyone learning a language. It sounds like laziness. It sounds like a complete disregard for the dictionary.
It totally does.
But the reality is entirely different. Understanding this messy real-life pronunciation is the primary secret to advanced listening skills. It's a linguistic phenomenon called connected speech.
Connected speech.
Yeah. Native speakers aren't ignoring the rules of pronunciation. They are following a completely different set of acoustic rules that only activate when words collide at natural speaking speeds.
So it's not a mistake. It's actually like an architectural feature of the language itself.
It is the foundation of how English operates. I mean, we need to look at how different languages handle rhythm. Languages like Spanish or Japanese are generally syllable time. Think of it like a machine gun rat-a-tat-tat.
Okay, very even.
Right. Every single syllable gets roughly the same amount of time and emphasis. English, however, is a stress-timed language.
Stress time.
Yes. The rhythm is based entirely on the stressed, important words, like the nouns and the main verbs. All the less important grammatical words in between get stretched, compressed, and squished together so the speaker can maintain that overarching rhythm.
Which explains why if you expect every word to be separated by a tiny pause, like a beginner audio CD, real life is going to sound like chaotic, unintelligible noise.
Exactly the issue. The words physically morph when they touch each other.
I want to try an exercise right now with you, the listener. Wherever you are, if it's safe to do so, just close your eyes for a second. Let's focus entirely on the rhythm and the raw sound, completely ignoring the spelling.
Good idea.
Take that B2 phrase we learned for investigating something. Look into it. If I say it like a syllable-timed robot, it's 4 distinct, isolated words. Look into it.
But in the messy, stress-timed reality of connected speech, the consonant at the end of one word links directly to the vowel at the start of the next. And in some cases entirely new, phantom sounds emerge just to bridge the physical gap in your mouth.
Wait, phantom sounds.
Yeah. When spoken quickly, look into it transforms completely. It sounds like one continuous word. Look into wit.
Look into wit. Oh, wow. There's suddenly a W sound in there. Look into wit. It sounds like an exotic bird. Where does the W even come from?
It comes from the physical mechanics of the human mouth. When you say into, your lips are rounded into a tight circle for the oo sound.
Right, ooh.
Right. And when you immediately transition to the I sound in it, your lips have to physically stretch out. That physical stretching motion naturally produces a W sound. Your mouth adds the W because it's physically easier than stopping the airflow to start a new word.
That is fascinating. So the messiness is just biological efficiency.
Exactly.
Let's look at another one. What about our phrase for preparing an apartment? Set up, SET, space, UP.
Okay, listen to what happens to the hard T in set when it's sandwiched between two vowel sounds in fluid connected speech. It softens dramatically.
It doesn't sound like a sharp T.
No, it doesn't sound like a sharp percussive T anymore. It becomes what linguists call an alveolar flap, or a flat T. Instead of stopping the air completely, your tongue just briefly bounces off the roof of your mouth. It sounds incredibly close to a soft D. So, set up transforms into set up.
Set up. I need to set up my apartment. Oh man, if you are a learner listening for the crisp word set and the crisp word up and the person rushing past you says set up, your brain is going to return a 404 error. Word not found.
Which is exactly why the B2 and C1 listening shift requires you to stop listening for the dictionary spelling. You have to train your ear for the connected, messy rhythm.
Okay, so we have the emotional vocabulary when you know to listen for the messy, connected, sounds like set up, and look into wit. But how do you bridge the massive canyon between knowing this stuff intellectually and actually using it smoothly in real life?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because I can know exactly how set up works on a neurological level, but when the barista asks me a question, my heart rate spikes, I panic, and I just revert back to robotic B1 textbook English.
Right. This touches on a really important aspect of cognitive science and how the brain actually acquires language. Knowing a word in your head, intellectually understanding its definition is B1.
All right.
Having the muscle memory to deploy it without thinking, especially in a high-stress situation, is true C1 fluency. And you simply cannot get there through passive reading or filling out multiple choice worksheets.
No, definitely not. I always think of this like learning a dance routine. You can't just watch the instructor and say, oh, I get it. You have to physically do the steps until your muscles remember them.
That is a phenomenal analogy, because that is exactly what is happening in your vocal tract and your brain's neural pathways. You are building physical procedural memory.
So how do we do that?
To achieve that, the research highlights two specific strategies. The first is a fundamental shift in how you test yourself, moving from simple recognition to contextual active recall.
Contextual active recall. Why are those traditional fill-in-the-blank tests so ineffective for actual fluency then?
Because multiple choice tests only require recognition, the answer is already on the page. Your brain just has to identify it. But in real life, nobody hands you a sentence with one word missing and 3 options to choose from.
That'd be nice, but yeah, no.
Right. Real life presents you with a blank slate and a problem, and you have to retrieve the entire concept from scratch under pressure. Active recall forces high-level cognitive retrieval. Instead of asking for a definition, you force your brain to solve a scenario.
Okay, let's demonstrate this with a scenario from the source material. I'll give you the prompt, and we'll see if you, listening right now, can pull the phrase from your own memory.
Get ready.
Here's the scenario. Your friend just moved to London. They call you in a total panic, completely overwhelmed and confused by the underground transit system. What is the C1 idiom you use to comfort them, telling them it will just take time to feel confident and balanced again?
The answer is you just need time to find your feet.
Find your feet. If you pulled that from your brain, you just successfully performed contextual active recall. You bypassed the textbook and solved an emotional problem with a language tool.
It's so much more powerful. And the second strategy takes this a step further into physical output. It's a technique called shadowing, and it is the ultimate challenge for building that vocal muscle memory.
Shadowing. I hear this term thrown around in language circles a lot. How does the actual mechanism work?
Shadowing is the act of physically mimicking a native speaker as closely as humanly possible. You take an audio clip, like a podcast or a movie scene, and you listen to a short phrase. Then you mimic the exact intonation, the rhythm, and all the connected speech we just talked about.
So you aren't reading it.
Exactly. You don't read it, you perform it. And the crucial rule is that you must repeat the target sentence aloud at least 3 times.
3 times. I imagine 3 times isn't just an arbitrary number, right? Is the first time just about getting your tongue untangled and the rest is building the habit?
You're touching on the exact neuroscience behind it. The first time you attempt it, you experience massive cognitive overload. Your brain is trying to coordinate the unfamiliar sounds, the pitch, the airflow. It almost always feels clunky and awkward.
Totally clunky.
Yeah. The second time, your brain is analyzing the gap between your first attempt and the native speaker's version, making micro-corrections. And by the third time, the neural pathway is starting to fire smoothly. Your mouth is actually building the physical procedural memory required to say, set up naturally, without hesitation.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. You've done the active recall. You've shadowed the phrases 3 times so your vocal cords can physically produce them. You have the muscle memory. But how do you make sure you don't wake up next Tuesday and realize your brain has quietly deleted all of it?
That's the danger, right?
Yeah. You have to organize this new knowledge logically in your long-term memory. And random alphabetized lists of vocabulary written in a notebook are practically impossible for the human brain to retain.
That is a fundamental truth of human memory. The brain aggressively discards isolated data points. If a piece of information isn't connected to a broader network, it just gets pruned. But there is a structure the human brain is absolutely hardwired to retain effortlessly.
Stories. We are storytelling machines. We remember narratives much better than raw facts.
Yes, we rely heavily on episodic memory. So the final step in moving to C1 fluency is story-based sequencing. You take the individual idioms you've practiced and you weave them into a chronological narrative. In our case, the sequence is the timeline of moving to a new city.
Oh, I love this. So instead of memorizing flashcards, you organize them by how the actual human experience unfolds.
Exactly.
Let's build that timeline organically. When you first arrive in a city, you can't just immediately start living. You have to figure out where the grocery stores and bus stops are. You look into how things work so you can get the lay of the land.
Right, that's the vital research phase, surveying the territory. Once you understand the physical space, you can actually move your belongings inside and set up your home.
The mechanical phase.
Yeah.
Putting the desks together, plugging in the lamps.
And finally, after a few weeks of living there and experiencing the routine, you begin to find your feet and you emotionally settle in.
Look into, set up, find your feet, settle in. It forms a complete narrative arc. Arrive, build, adapt, comfort.
Just hearing the idioms in that sequential order makes them feel incredibly sticky. It feels like they're adhering to my episodic memory instead of just floating around as abstract vocabulary.
Because it makes intuitive, logical sense to your brain. One action naturally causes the next action. And this leads to the ultimate output challenge for the learner, which is micro-storytelling.
Micro-storytelling.
Yeah. To truly prove you have mastered this C1 material, you have to push beyond writing a single disconnected sentence in a sterile textbook exercise. You need to write 2 or 3 sentences linking these phrases together to prove you understand the context and the flow. The research actually provided a brilliant example of this micro-storytelling in action. Listen to how naturally these phrases weave together to tell a complete emotionally resonant mini-story. When I moved to Tokyo, it took me 3 months to find my feet. I really had to look into how the recycling system worked before I could finally settle in.
That right there is perfect C1 output.
It really is.
It allows for the rhythm of connected speech, it expresses the very real emotion of the struggle, and it links the idioms chronologically to tell a story.
It's elegant. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, navigating your own language journey or your own new environment? Let's recap the terrain we covered in this deep dive.
Let's do it.
We started by standing on that cold street corner, feeling totally lost and overwhelmed in a new city. We discovered that B1 textbook English is just the technical map, but B2 and C1 fluency is knowing the actual shortcuts.
The human elements.
Right. It's using collocations and idioms to express the emotion of the transition, evolving from the robotic establish to the comfortable settle in, and from the clinical adapt to the physical balance of finding your feet.
We also pulled back the curtain on the messy acoustic reality of connected speech. We explored why stress-timed languages naturally compress words, turning setup into setup, and why listening for that fluid rhythm is the real secret to advanced comprehension, rather than just getting frustrated by perceived laziness.
And finally, we explored how to rewire our brains from intellectual knowledge to physical muscle memory. We swapped multiple choice recognition for contextual active recall. We practiced the dance steps of language by shadowing phrases 3 times. And we locked it all securely into our episodic memory using chronological story sequencing.
It is an incredibly comprehensive framework for language acquisition. But, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying philosophy leaves us with a fascinating and maybe slightly provocative final thought.
I'm ready. What is it?
We spent so much time today dissecting how native-level fluency isn't clean, crisp, or precise. It is entirely full of blurry, messy connected speech like set up and look into wit. It's full of strange, illogical idiom.
It completely abandons textbook perfection for the sake of human connection.
Exactly the point. So perhaps the ultimate goal of learning any complex new system, whether that is mastering a foreign language, starting a highly technical new job, or physically navigating the unfamiliar streets of a foreign city, isn't about striving for perfect, sterile precision.
Okay.
The textbook is rigid, right? It snaps under the pressure of real life. Maybe true mastery is simply learning how to comfortably, confidently, and unapologetically navigate the messiness.
Navigate the messiness. I absolutely love that takeaway. Because honestly, that first month in a new city is always going to be messy.
Always.
You might still accidentally order the wrong coffee while you are desperately trying to get the lay of the land. But once you realize that the messiness isn't a mistake, that it is actually the vibrant rhythm of life happening around you, that is the exact moment you finally start to find your feet.
Couldn't have said it better.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.